Hey guys, Eric here, and I want to talk to you real quick about thedailydownforce.com. Every day, this website covers the latest news and trends in NASCAR, from silly season right through the checkered flag in Phoenix. Need a new morning routine as soon as you wake up? Well, now you have it, dailydownforce.com. This is the website I use to keep up with the industry, the drivers, and of course, what the community is talking about. And speaking of community, dailydownforce.com is also home to some of your other favorite NASCAR content creators. Plus, they've got all sorts of information that I like to keep bookmarked, like schedules, penalties, ratings, and everything you want to know. Oh, and be sure to check out the merch shop while you're there to find some exclusive diecasts and collectibles. So check out dailydownforce.com, that's dailydownforce.com, and I'll see you in the replies.
Hey there, NASCAR fans! Have you got your copy of the latest edition of NASCAR Pole Position Print Magazine? If not, there's no better time than now to subscribe at polepositionmag.com. NASCAR Pole Position is the only print magazine covering NASCAR. Officially licensed by NASCAR, NASCAR Pole Position Magazine is published throughout the NASCAR season, and each edition is an instant collector's item, packed with great feature stories and photography. The magazine is even mailed to you in a poly bag for those who love to collect NASCAR memorabilia. At polepositionmag.com, you can even find past issues available to purchase. Get your subscription to NASCAR Pole Position and get great NASCAR content delivered straight to your mailbox throughout the season. Learn more at polepositionmag.com. That's polepositionmag.com.
Hey y'all, Rick Houston here, and I want to tell you about my new show, the Moonshine and Motorsports Racing Podcast. I've partnered up with the state of North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources to help uncover the history behind moonshining mountain boys, professional wheelmen, and the backwoods and city lights of the Tar Heel State. In the first episode, I sat down with Winston Kelly at the NASCAR Hall of Fame for a little behind-the-scenes gossip about Junior Johnson's engineering skills.
He's got two things in his hand, pipe wrench and channel lock pliers. And they weren't new. They had been around the block a time or two.
Wasn't the first steel they built, I bet.
No, I think the pliers had been red before, but paint had worn off.
And in the second episode, I talked to a professional hillbilly, a.k.a. Dr. Daniel Pierce of UNC Asheville, to find out the real history of moonshiners and their battles with the revenuers.
He wrote about one of his experience of trying to chase down this bootlegger in this souped-up car, and he complained that the government gave him these piece of crap, cheapo cars, and that were really no match, but he thought he was doing pretty good, and then the guy just hits it and just takes off and practically disappeared. But then the guy makes a bootleg turn and comes back towards him. And as he said, it was a game of chicken, and I was a chicken. And so he ran off the road. And actually, he was the guy who caught Junior Johnson at his daddy's steal when Junior got tangled up in a barbed wire fence.
So check out the Moonshine and Motorsports Racing Podcast, available on YouTube, dailydownforce.com, and all of your favorite podcasting platforms. And be sure to check out my regular show on NASCAR history, the Scene Vault Podcast.
Eric Estepp here. One of my favorite parts of being a NASCAR fan is collecting diecasts. It's how I got my start on YouTube, actually. To me, a room is not complete until it features shelves of NASCAR diecast cars. It's as good a time as ever to continue your collection or begin an all-new one by pre-ordering your favorite driver's 2022 next-gen diecast at lionelracing.com or at any authorized Lionel retailer. Lionel is the official diecast of NASCAR, and don't miss Lionel Racing's NASCAR Authentics diecasts at a Walmart or Target near you. Not only is Lionel the official diecast of NASCAR, but they're also official supporters of the Out of the Groove podcast network. So what are you waiting for? Head to lionelracing.com to order your favorite driver's 2022 diecast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the very first episode of Next Gen Creators. I am Joshua Lipowski here with the Daily Downforce, and welcome into this brand new podcast here from the Daily Downforce called Next Gen Creators. If you were not able to listen to the intro podcast, I would highly recommend you go back and listen to that, but just kind of a background of what this is and who I am. So my name is Joshua Lipowski. I am originally from Northwest Indiana, and I spent my time in college studying sports journalism, and I got into NASCAR as a kid as a fan around the mid 2000s era, and then I got into NASCAR from the media side of it in my sophomore year of college, I should say. My sophomore year of college, when I started writing about William Byron. I was at Liberty University in Lynchburg, started writing about William Byron and how he would do every week. That's how I got into NASCAR from the journalistic side, and a couple months after I graduated, I got the job here at the Daily Downforce. I've been writing for them since the beginning of May of 2023, so I've been here for a couple months. It's been really awesome. It's been a ton of fun, and pitched this idea for Next Gen Creators. And Next Gen Creators, this is all about promoting. It's all about highlighting content creators, this kind of new age, this new media, that we have in NASCAR. We're seeing a lot more NASCAR creators on platforms such as YouTube that are beginning to really stake their audience, I guess, for lack of a better term, in NASCAR content creation. And it's really cool to see the way that these content creators have been able to develop over time. And what I want to do on this show is I want to tell their story, talk about what got them into content creation in the first place, talk about what it was that got them into NASCAR, kind of their process, what they've been through as a content creator, all sorts of stuff like that. That's the type of stuff I want to talk about. And the first episode we have is with Eric Estepp. I'm sure you know Eric Estepp pretty well. He is the host of Out of the Groove, which is one of the top NASCAR YouTube shows that we have today. Does great work on YouTube. And today had a great conversation with him. It was very cool to listen to Eric, how he talked about kind of how he got into Out of the Groove and how that became a thing for him. Eric has been a guy that's been on YouTube for a very long time. He's been on YouTube for way longer than Out of the Groove's even been a thing. And so he does have a really interesting story about how he was someone that kind of came up through that era when YouTube was just starting to become something where you could really truly create full-time content on it and really start making it a job. Eric has a very unique perspective on that. Also has a unique perspective on NASCAR content creation as well, specifically talking a lot about how passionate he is regarding talking about people that are his age that love NASCAR. And we talk a lot on the Daily Downforce, and it's a big topic about how NASCAR is with reaching the younger demographics. Eric is someone that truly is reaching that demographic. And not only that, Eric also talks very openly about what he went through in order to make Out of the Groove something that worked, and his creative process. And he even ended, this episode today by just giving a very honest assessment about what he and his plans are for the future. And I appreciated his honesty. It was really great to hear him be open about what he intends to do with the future and the aspirations that he has. And they were some of the stuff was not stuff I necessarily expected to hear, and it was all really cool. And it was all awesome to just hear Eric Estepp be so open, be so honest about what he is trying to do and the type of content he is looking to create for you guys on this platform. So without further ado, here is episode 1 of Next Gen Creators with Eric Estepp. Hello, everybody, and now it is time to welcome in Eric Estepp to Next Gen Creators, this brand new podcast from the Daily Downforce. Again, Joshua Lipowski here with you. So, Eric, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. You can't see the boxes. Oh, nope, you can't see some of the boxes behind me. I've been in the process of packing up and moving for about the billionth time here in the past few days. But so it's good to take a break from that for a moment and sit down and talk racing, talk YouTube, talk internet, all that good stuff with you, man. Appreciate you having me.
Awesome. I'm happy to have you here, man. I really appreciate you coming on. So, I guess we'll start off with the very basic, Eric, how did you get into NASCAR, first of all, when you were a young kid?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't come from a family of race fans, really. I have an uncle that was, I think, a big Dale Jr. or Tony Stewart fan back in the day. But really, I just found NASCAR all on my own. I love playing with Hot Wheels cars and things as a little kid. And then one day I stumbled across a race on TV, and I was watching it with my dad, and that's sort of where it started. Then I think I got the NASCAR Thunder 2004 video game, and that's how I learned the drivers and tracks. So then when I tuned into the race on Sunday, I knew what was happening, because again, I didn't really have anyone. I had Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, and Darrell Waltrip teaching me everything I knew about NASCAR. So I had to go out on my own, really, and learn a lot of the intricate details for myself. So that was really it. I would say in 2005 in November, I went to my first race. My dad took me to Texas Motor Speedway for my birthday. And that's when I officially became like hooked. At that point, I was a diehard fan, watching every Sunday for much of my youth.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. Yeah. That was around the same time I became a NASCAR fan too, around that 2005 time. My dad kind of rediscovered it. So yeah, it was kind of around that same time when NASCAR was kind of at its peak. So out of curiosity, do you remember what that first race was that you saw on TV? Do you remember?
For some reason, I think it was like Pocono. I don't remember exactly. I just feel like I remember a lot of green, a lot of like trees and stuff. And I just remember, I think it was either Jeff Gordon or Dale Jr., one of them passing the other. Like Dale Jr. went to the inside, made a normal, just traditional pass. Gordon probably just gave him the position because it was early in the race, whatever. And I remember my dad sitting on the couch, not a NASCAR fan, but he just sat there and said, gosh, that is amazing that they can do that at those speeds. And that's like stuck with me, because I'm like, oh, you're watching on TV. How fast are they going? Like, 100 miles an hour, maybe, like, yeah, freeway speed. Oh, 180, 190. I think it was Pocono, but I don't remember for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Ironic, because we're recording this the week of the Pocono race. So that's kind of ironic. So it was right around this time of year then, about
probably, yeah.
About almost 20 years ago now, thinking about that. The fact that 2004 is almost 20 years ago just doesn't sit right with me, but that's
no, I know what you mean.
That's neither here nor there. So, I think pretty much everyone that's followed you knows you're a Matt Kenseth fan, grew up a Matt Kenseth fan. Can you say how you got into liking Matt Kenseth as you grew up?
Yeah, it was kind of random because I'm from Texas. Matt Kenseth is very Midwestern, very Wisconsin. I didn't visit Wisconsin until I was probably a teenager, and it was to visit the Matt Kenseth Museum back in the day when that was still a thing in Cambridge. I really don't know. Playing NASCAR Thunder, I really liked the yellow and black DeWalt car. I remember just sort of picking that car quite often. I liked how it said "guaranteed tough" on the back, the rear TV panel. Thought it was a cool looking car. I later found out my mom had an old friend from high school that we went and visited in Georgia when I was a little kid, and her son, who was older than me, his bedroom was decked out in Matt Kenseth stuff everywhere, and I was like, whoa, that's the video game guy. Like, that's the guy I play on my PlayStation 2. And it's then I found out that my mom's friend, I guess, is like a distant relative to Matt Kenseth. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of a fun connection. And so that's really where it started.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. That's cool. So, tell me then, now as we shift away from NASCAR, let's shift now towards you getting into content creation. So you've talked a lot about how you are I guess you've described it, a film/TV nerd. So you've liked the idea of making videos for a long time. I even remember, I've watched you since the Double E Cup Series days. So I remember you used to post like little like shorts and stuff like that back in the day. So tell me about how that sort of stuff kind of came about in your life.
Yeah, I always loved just making short, goofy videos. I think growing up in the rise of YouTube, again, like YouTube, when was it formed? 2005, something like that. 2007, 2008, 2009, it really became like a legitimate social media and video sharing platform. And yeah, I kind of grew up in the thick of that. And so I remember getting a cheap little camera from my parents when I was maybe like 10 years old. And I would just, go into Windows Movie Maker, edit like a free editor. I'd mess around with my friends and my sister, and we just film goofy skits and whatnot. And I just really enjoyed that. But then in 2011, I looked on YouTube and I saw a lot of cool independent NASCAR sort of just grassroots content, just folks filming things in their spare bedroom. I saw some die-cast stop motion type videos. I looked at my little collection and said, hey, I think I could do that. I know exactly how they did that. I can do the same thing, maybe add my own twist to it. And immediately when I posted my first NASCAR die-cast stop motion video, it became my most viewed video. I think it was my first video to hit probably 200 views, maybe anything like that. And I thought that was a huge deal. And so I kind of just went all in. I'm like, well, hey, I love making videos. I already love NASCAR. this is a great way to sort of merge the two together. And that's really where it started, I guess. And that was all the way back in like 2011, early 2012. So like kind of crazy to think about now.
So I take it that you were pretty self-taught in terms of how you learned to create content and learned how to make videos, stuff like that for the most part. Would that be accurate based on what I'm hearing?
I think so. I mean, I learned a lot by watching other YouTube videos. I watched a lot of YouTube in my early years. I did go to film school when I was, in college. I did go. And so I guess I learned a few tricks and things and just sort of business philosophies almost there. But no, growing up, I filmed all sorts of stuff, the stop motion stuff. No, I guess it was just, you just learn by seeing other people do it. And then you just kind of practice it yourself.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, as someone that's in this field too, I can relate. Like, I mean, there really is, and I'll say this to anyone that wants to get into this, like, there really is no substitute for just going out and doing it. Like, you can't learn, like, and I'm sure you would agree with this. Like, you can't just, whatever you can learn in the classroom, like, that's minuscule to what you actually can do. You actually have to go out and do stuff in order to make things happen.
I would agree. And I think especially when it comes down to internet related, content and business and work, it's become obviously a lot more established, but it still feels, it's ever changing, I suppose. So there's still not like a definitive encyclopedia or guide or blueprint to here's how you become successful on the internet. Here's how you can do this, that. Like there's still so many different ways to, I guess, get there that you kind of just have to feel it out for yourself, try a bunch of different things and just, if something sticks, keep pushing towards that. If you find that you're good at one particular thing, keep pushing towards that. But you're right. There is no definitive guide to how to do any of this stuff.
So kind of along those lines, what was your original philosophy for creating content when you started on YouTube? I guess, when you were kind of at that age, when you were starting to, I guess, take it a little bit more seriously, if that makes sense. I don't know what exactly your timeline was, but what was kind of your original content philosophy when you started making videos?
I don't know. I guess I really enjoyed it. I think, especially when I first started doing NASCAR related videos, I just really loved being able to share my love for stock car racing with other people similar to me in age. Cause I was a kid, I was like 14, 15 years old. And a lot of the folks that watched my videos were also probably 14, 15, or even like 8, 9, 10, 12 years old. And growing up, like I said, my family wasn't really into NASCAR. Me and my dad sort of started watching at the same time. I didn't really have many friends who knew who Tony Stewart and Jeff Gordon were, but I wouldn't call them fans. And so I think originally what motivated me was getting all the comments and, just sort of being a part of the online NASCAR conversation with people my age or close to me in age. I'd never had that before. I could go walk down the street and talk, about the Houston Astros. I grew up in Houston. I could talk about the Houston Astros with anyone. I could talk about the Rockets or the Texans or, who knows, any local team. I could never walk around and talk NASCAR with my friends at school. And this was sort of that for me. So I think that motivated me early on. I mean, I don't know. I just enjoyed it. I guess I just really enjoyed the process of like planning something out, writing it down, sketching ideas, and then producing it, and then seeing it come together in the editing bay. I really like that process of seeing a complete vision come together step by step, piece by piece, until you have a fully finished product. My favorite thing doing those stop motion videos wasn't the filming, because it's tedious. It's hours of just, push, click, fine tune, click. Tedious. When you finally have all the footage and you sat down at your computer and put it into Adobe Premiere or whatever I was using at the time, and just boom, there it goes. It just like played out almost like perfectly. That was the moment where I was like, oh, okay, the last 20 hours were worth it. And that was such a rewarding feeling. It was in those early years, and still is today. With a few times I dabble with like animation and things, it still is so rewarding to just lay it out on a timeline and it just works. And all those hours were worth it. I love that.
So on that wavelength, can you dig into some of your creative process about kind of what goes into you making a video kind of on a daily basis, whether it's an Out of the Groove or whether it's something a little bit different like an at-track vlog or any other type of content that you try to put out on your channel on a daily basis?
Yeah. So nowadays, the focus is fully shifted towards what is the online conversation. Like, when I was a kid, it was just kind of fun to hear, oh, these people really don't like, Tony Stewart for some reason. It's just interesting to kind of talk back then for fun. Now that's like the job. That the job now is, and it's a fun job, but the job is to stay in the loop. What are people talking about? What's the conversation? I scour obviously Daily Downforce, look at what you folks are talking about, what you guys are able to find on the internet. I'm on Twitter every day. I'm in my own YouTube comments from previous recent episodes, figuring out what people are discussing. And I'm reading the latest news, listening to the latest podcasts from all sorts of different outlets. So, I mean, every day I'm just trying to soak up as much information as possible. Whatever stands out as interesting or relevant to me or to the audience, that's when I sit down and, spend, it could be an hour, it could be a couple hours, could be more or less time researching, kind of organizing. I don't have writers, I don't have a staff, so I'm my own staff, looking up stats, looking up important details. And so I spend much of my mornings doing that. And then I typically film. I might grab like some lunch real quick, and then I'll film something and then go to edit. And editing now is so much faster than it used to be because it's so simple to edit my videos. I can kind of just blow through it. It's almost like muscle memory now. I'm only half paying attention to the screen because it's just click, drag, cut, click, drag, cut, click, drag, cut, click, drag, cut. And it's almost like I can just turn my brain off for an hour. But the process has changed quite a bit, especially as Out of the Groove has become the more dominant feature. But to your point on like the at-track vlogs is like I went to the Chicago street race earlier this year, and anything that's new like that, and I know that was going to be a unique event, I went into it knowing, hey, I'm going to film, I'm going to document, I'm going to be boots on the ground, I'm going to show everyone what it's like from this perspective, because everyone's watching on TV, but not everyone's going to get a clear view of what the at-track experience is like. Obviously, the rain and storms and flooding sort of messed up what my plans were for that race. But like I filmed at North Wilkesboro this year, which is a new track. Last year, I filmed at Pocono, which was a new track for me. Circuit of the Americas, when it was added to the schedule. Indy Road Course. I've just, again, it's what's on the tip of everyone's tongue. And new is always interesting because it's new. So that's sort of how I decide where I'm going next, what I'm going to film when I'm there, and what goes into a daily episode of my show.
I think to that point, I think you mentioned this in a recent video, you're going to some new tracks you're coming up here in the next few weeks. Is that correct?
I'll be at Michigan for the first time
ever.
At least I've not been to Michigan. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to, because I'm also going to check out the Roush Museum. I think it's in or just outside of Detroit, a while in there as well. I know they have a lot of really cool cars that I know a lot about as a lifelong Matt Kenseth fan, but I'm going to hopefully film some stuff there. But yeah, Michigan's a new track for me. I'd like every year I try to at least add one track that I'd never been to. And I guess there's a couple this year, but Michigan's a big one.
Cool. Awesome. I've been to Michigan before, actually. It's been, it's been like 10 years since I've been there, but I have been to Michigan before. So,
I've heard great things. I'm excited.
Yeah,
I know they're not going 212 miles per hour anymore, unfortunately, but I still think it'll look great.
No, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but it's in a really cool area. It's honestly, if you like to camp, I actually would argue Michigan's a great place to camp. So
that's what I've heard.
Yeah, it's a great place to camp. I will say that much. So anyways, kind of going back to kind of like your time as a YouTuber, when you first started doing YouTube, I guess as you were getting older, you were getting ready to go to college and stuff like that, did you ever expect YouTube was going to be your full-time gig, or was it just something that you were just, this is just a hobby for me for now until I get a real job, quote unquote, after I graduate?
Yeah, no, in high school, it was like, in high school, it was my real job. A lot of my friends would work at, grocery stores, would be baggers, they'd be waiters, they'd be cashiers at Chick-fil-A, whatever, like that's what a lot of my friends were going to do. That's typical kind of high school job, a lot of first jobs for folks. And I was very lucky because YouTube had taken off to a point where it gave me a little extra spending money on the side. I didn't really feel like I needed to go get a real job at that point. So I think because of that, in the back of my mind since high school, since I was probably 16 or 17 years old and I first got monetization turned on my channel, I always thought that, maybe at the very least, this would be some sort of, side hustle, a little side business or project I could always dabble in. I could always do, when I went to college to study filmmaking and TV, I thought, I'll probably end up in Los Angeles, part of the Hollywood system, trying to work my way up, trying to get some of my own projects made. But in the meantime, I'll always have this creative outlet over here on the side that I can go to express myself, to feel, to see my creative visions realized to some degree. And if it makes a little extra money, a little extra spending money, hey, LA is expensive. That would be nice. I wouldn't mind that. I never intended or never expected, I guess, YouTube to become a full-time gig. It sort of just happened. in 2018, 2019, with Out of the Groove becoming more, I think more of a staple, I think it became a part of a lot of folks' sort of daily routine. And so, I was motivated to put out more consistent episodes. Viewership was up, numbers were getting to a point where I was like, hey, this maybe I could maybe take a risk and try this full time. Then 2020, I was about to graduate, pandemic. I had to leave. I was doing an internship actually in Los Angeles. We basically all got sent home because Hollywood was shut down. No productions were being worked on the first couple months of COVID. And so I was basically, I had to go move back in with my parents, at least for a few months, to figure out, okay, well, what do I do next? I graduated online. I didn't even go to the Zoom ceremony. I was just like, okay, well, the real world is here. It's time. My only source of income is YouTube. Let's maybe double down on this and just see where it goes. The whole world is moving online with Zoom calls and things like that. I'm already here. Let's see if that gives me an advantage. And so I sort of just committed to it, especially in 2020, and it went very well. And I thought, heck, shoot, I'm moving out of my parents' house. Let's keep going. Let's ride this wave until it crashes, I guess. And it's so far, we're 3 years removed from that or so, roughly, and it's still going really well. So I'm very fortunate that it's turned out the way that it had, but it was never plan A, I guess. But I mean, it's been a blast. I could not be happier with how things have turned out, honestly.
Out of curiosity, man, obviously the pandemic kind of threw you for a loop. Like, it threw everybody for a loop, obviously. It threw the whole world for a loop for that period of time. I was in college at the time. I was finishing up my first year in college, and but you did you have a plan A that you had planned for beyond 2020 before the pandemic hit, and then the pandemic just kind of shut it down? Or was it just the internship that the pandemic kind of kicked?
I went to school in Austin, Texas, at the University of Texas. They had a good film school, and Texas, especially that area, has a good sort of film, I don't know, I guess just sort of basis establishment. There's a few good filmmakers from Texas that often come back to Texas to work on productions. Matthew McConaughey was a professor in the building that I was in, so it was I was into that kind of stuff. Still am, I guess. But I went to Austin because I knew they had an internship program in LA sort of set up. And so that's where I was spending my last semester. The intention was to get an internship. And then while I had that internship, use that internship to interview for other jobs. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. There really wasn't a definitive plan A. I knew I wanted to work in either film or TV in some way, shape, or form. I was looking into, I remember jobs and internships at like Fox Sports and ESPN that were both had headquarters in Los Angeles. But I was also looking at major studios. I remember the company I interned for was a small production company, but they were affiliate of NBC, I believe. It was funny. My job was basically to read books and scripts that they were considering, that they had like options on. This company did like there's an option period where you have the amount of time to say, hey, we bought the option. Now we're going to commit and make this into a movie. You have like an option, you have a period. And so it was my job to read stuff and kind of write down what I thought about it. And it was funny. I read a book there. I guess I signed an NDA, but it's out now. I don't think it matters. About called The Night Agent. That was really fun. It was a good kind of thriller action, government conspiracy story. And that was 3 years ago. Earlier this spring, I was sitting on the couch with my girlfriend looking through Netflix, and there's The Night Agent. It had been made. Wow. And I remember I was like, dang, I was really glowing in my review and my coverage of this. And it was really cool to see that show was now on Netflix. It was a big hit, apparently. Like, everyone was talking about it. It was like number 1 or 2 on Netflix for like a week. And so I thought that was kind of funny. So I would have probably been a greater part of, not the process of that show necessarily, but that's the kind of stuff I loved. I loved reading, the early developmental process of filmmaking. And so I wanted to work somewhere in the industry doing things like that. But who knows? Hollywood is so unpredictable. So that's why I say I'm very fortunate. I feel very blessed that things have gone the way they've gone, because it would have been a grind, I imagine, to try and to work out in California in that industry.
Absolutely. So Eric Estepp had a small part, I guess you could say, in an
uncredited
show.
Uncredited,
Wow.
but no, it was just kind of funny. I was like, oh wow, like I probably had like a 0.0000001% impact in that getting made, but look, it got made and it's really popular. That's awesome. I knew it.
Have you watched the show?
I did. I actually did sit down and watch it. It was good. Very similar to the
Really?
book that I remember reading. It was good.
Good. That's awesome. That's great to hear. So we kind of jump forward in the timeline here. Let's jump backwards here a little bit. So, and again, I'll remind you, I've watched you since the Double E Cup Series days. So I somewhat remember kind of where your channel was at this time. So, Out of the Groove kind of came when you were, I think, just starting in college. And I think that, if I remember right, you're going to have to remind me on the timeline, but if you remember right, I think that Double E Cup Series was kind of in a hiatus because you didn't have room to film. And so Out of the Groove was it kind of born out of that? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. I think the timeline is pretty much exactly right. I did a few stop motion races and things once I got into college, but yeah, it was definitely under a hiatus. And that was true. Is I didn't have the space. I'd moved into a dorm with a stranger, kind of a random roommate, who was really chill, really cool. But I don't think you'd have been chill and cool with me taking over, not even kidding, probably half of the square footage of our dorm room to set these racetracks up. There was not the space. So I would say Out of the Groove was born both out of, again, like an interest in wanting to continue that conversation, have a more direct conversation with fans my age. That's something I'd always craved and was still craving more of. But in a way, it was also born out of necessity to stay, relevant on the internet. It was, well, shoot, the thing I'm known for is NASCAR, specifically stop motion videos. And a little bit of my personality and face would sneak into the videos through that. But that's, I was known for being part of the NASCAR online world. How do I stay a part of that? Because I wanted to. And I couldn't do stop motions consistently. So I thought, screw it. I know I have an ugly haircut. Let's put myself on camera and just talk about what's going on in the racing world. And yeah, I looked around and this is no disrespect to any of these people because they're all obviously way more knowledgeable and experienced at this kind of stuff than I am. But you look at, who was on Fox, and it was, Larry McReynolds and Mike Joy, who are outstanding. It was older name, Darrell Waltrip. You looked over at, a lot of Sirius XM. You have guys like Dave Moody, who are legends of the industry, but it's just older fans, I think, or older, not fans, older members of the industry who I think are speaking more so to older fans. And NASCAR's always struggled to maintain and get a new younger audience, and I felt like that was a gap that I could hopefully play a role in, and I think I have, at least a little bit to this point in time. But at the time, I just that's where I saw the opening was. I thought, there's not a lot of 20-something-year-olds talking NASCAR, just throwing their opinions out there and getting other people and feeding off other people's opinions. That's not really a thing in any controlled or consistent format. So that's sort of where it came from.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So, you already had a base because you had created YouTube videos before. So how long did it take for you before you actually started finding the return on investment you wanted to in Out of the Groove, or did it come pretty quickly?
It took I don't know if it took a long time, but I did the stop motion videos, and I'd only do one. Those would only come out like once every week or two. And so when they did come out, it was more of a big event. It was, the next, like, I've been waiting for this race 6. It's coming. Let's see if, Jeff Gordon extends his points lead. Like, so those, I was used to those getting hundreds of thousands of views. I mean, I have one that just recently hit 10 million views. Like, that's crazy to me, but absolutely just mind blowing numbers. But I went and did Out of the Groove, put my dumb old face on camera for the first time, and I think I got like 600 views, like not even 1,000. And my first few episodes, I think 1,000 or so views were probably the limit, where it's like the peak. And I thought, damn, okay. I mean, yeah, I can post 2 or 3 of these a week without much issue, but they're not getting nearly the traction that the stop motions were. So it took some time. I was consistent enough with it. I just kind of kept working at it. Eventually I got to a point, like even now my views, I don't get 300,000 views on an Out of the Groove episode ever. That's not a thing. Partially because I post every day. So if you missed this one, there's one tomorrow. But it took a long time for me to get to where I felt, the viewership was good and great and steady, which is part of why I was still doing some stop motion videos from time to time in college, because those I knew were more reliable and would get views, and just had to sprinkle a few of those in there. So it was like I almost feel like I soft launched Out of the Groove, because I think when I first started it, I only did one episode a week for a few weeks. And I don't know, it was just kind of impossible to pack in a week's worth of events and news into 10 minutes. Like, I mean, it's possible, but it wasn't possible to do that and then also add the personality and the other things I wanted to add to it. So it evolved pretty quickly. But early on, it was hard to get used to. It was definitely it was humbling.
I mean, I'm sure it was. I mean, it takes, whenever you venture out to try something new, I mean, that's always a challenge for any content creator, even if you're, like where you are and where you're not expecting it to be your full-time gig. I mean, it's still a challenge when you're expanding out. You're wondering, is this audience going to like what I'm actually doing currently right now?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyways, so moving on from that, take me through the timeline. So we kind of went all the way up to about the pandemic, which is when you started, when the world went crazy. And so, what was the timeline of Out of the Groove from that point onwards, to when you started actually pursuing it full time, really just almost out of necessity, I guess, is a way to describe it?
Yeah, in a way, it was kind of partially born out of necessity to stay somewhat relevant and regular on uploads in college, and then it became a full-time job because it was the only way I could see to make money at that point, based on the college degree I had, at least. So yeah, I mean, I basically in 2020, I think I went full time to the point where I was posting 4 or 5 episodes a week. I never thought I'd be a daily uploader kind of guy, and I'm still not quite, but I'm close. And I guess it just kind of. The show, I feel like, hasn't changed that much since 2020. I think I'd like to think I've gotten a little better at organizing my thoughts, being a little more cohesive, also a little more, efficient in my delivery. I don't beat around the bush, waste as much time. I get more directly to the point. I have a stronger opinion or something that I really want to say about each topic. I'm not just reading the news. I never want to be the guy just reading the news. Like, that's important. People want to be informed, but I also need to add my own touch to it, I suppose. And I mean, it hasn't changed a whole lot. I guess beyond just doing Out of the Groove since 2020, I've been very fortunate to travel to a lot more races, especially 2021, when sort of the pandemic for the first time sort of felt like it was on the back end. And I went to a bunch of tracks in 2021 I'd never been to before. I went to Road America. Was a big week in India. I'd been to Indianapolis, but not since I was a kid. So getting to go see Indianapolis and a lot of it was real fun to meet face to face other people in the industry. Like, for the first time ever, I was just a kid filming in his dorm room, then his parents' spare bedroom, then my own spare bedroom. But I was able to go up and talk to, I mentioned folks like Dave Moody before. He's been on my show. Like, tons of respect for what he's done. Tons of respect for what so many reporters, radio broadcasters, and so beginning in 2021, when I was traveling to a lot more races, I really got to sit down and meet a lot of them. And I, to an extent, I felt like accepted, but more so, it was just sort of surreal for me to think I've watched and listened to a lot of these folks for years and years and years, and to now be, even remotely, to at least be in the same room as them. I'm not going to say I have the same clout or the same professionalism even as many of them, but I to at least be in the same room and have many of the same opportunities as them. That was, 2021. I just found myself pinching myself quite often, being like, I cannot believe that this has actually gotten to this level. But I guess to your original question, the actual process of Out of the Groove has not changed that much since then. We've obviously added some new things. Like, we had the Out of the Groove weekly viewers guide for a couple of years there, which was a neat sort of different avenue for some content to get spread. We added some writers to the team, and now with Daily Downforce, which isn't directly my project, but it's something I'm still involved with. And obviously, this, I'm very closely involved with the creators and head directors and stuff of Daily Downforce and all you guys. So it's cool to see, I guess, the Out of the Groove influencer reach get bigger the last couple of years. But at its core, the show really hasn't changed. I just think I do better research. I know a few more things than I did 3 years ago. And I hope that makes the actual quality of videos a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, obviously, that's interesting. The fact that you feel that the show hasn't changed too much, because, I mean, most of the times it seems with content creators, like, it feels like, or at least maybe you don't notice it, but maybe they feel like me, like my process has changed completely from the way that I started, but you're the exact opposite in that sense.
Yeah, I guess for no pun intended, I sort of found a groove with it, where it was just, like I said, it was a good routine. I just read and listen to a lot. I try to contextualize it the best way I can. Again, add my sprinkle of opinion where I feel it's necessary. And just that process has become, formulaic makes it sound boring, but it is formulaic. It's predictable, I guess, from my perspective. And when you work in YouTube and I think anyone who works for themselves would probably say that it's one of the most stressful parts of that is how unpredictable it is. You're your own boss, you make your own schedule, but also, if you're selling something, if you're producing content like me, like I don't know how much money I'll make this month or next month. What if I don't make this big sale? What if this video flops? What if this happens or another, and so anything that's predictable, like my daily routine, gonna wake up, gonna read, gonna edit, gonna write, gonna organize, gonna film, gonna edit, gonna upload. Anything that's like a routine, I think I need some of that. And I found that in 2020, and it's been modified maybe a little bit since then, but not in a dramatic way, I'd say.
Couple kind of fun questions here because I want to transition to talking about your relationship with other content creators here too. Mm-hmm. I want to talk about that, but a couple of fun ones. First of all, favorite track you've been to and favorite Out of the Groove episode you've made.
Oh my goodness. Favorite track I've been to. I'm sentimental. I still love Texas Motor Speedway. It's the track I've been to the most. It was my first race I ever visited. It was my home track for the longest time. The racing's not great anymore, but the facility's still decent. I used to say Bristol is still probably my favorite to watch on TV. This is going to sound sacrilegious almost, but the in-person viewership or in-person, views at Bristol are still phenomenal. Like there's a reason that track used to be on a waiting list to get tickets. I get that, but I would go Daytona. I think the amenities at Daytona, around the track, all the restaurants and things right outside the track, the actual like concourse itself, since they renovated it 6 years ago. I went to a race right before it got renovated, and then I went to the first race after it was renovated. Night and day difference. It's as nice as most NFL stadiums that I've ever seen. And the infield garage experience is a little dated, but still really, really good. So I think Daytona is probably my favorite track to visit in person right now.
Wow. I wouldn't have thought Daytona, because I would think it'd be so big. It'd be tough to, like, as far as that track watching, I feel like it would be kind of tough to watch, but wow, that's interesting. I never would have thought that. I've been to Bristol, so I can say for sure Bristol is amazing to be at in person. So yeah, I can totally confirm that. I would not have thought Daytona. That would not have been my first thought process. It's
nice, and you just sit up high enough and you can see all the way around. And I like that. Talladega, Phoenix are a couple tracks that have really renovated their infield sort of fan experiences, and like it's world class. It's outstanding. But I just feel like Daytona right now, if I was to bring a new fan to a NASCAR race, I'd bring him to Daytona. Not necessarily even the Daytona 500. That would be huge. That'd be a good way to do it. But I would just bring him to Daytona because I just think it's the easiest access point for any new fan.
Huh. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I've never been to Daytona. I've been to a few tracks, but I haven't been to Daytona. I've been to Bristol. I've been to I'm kind of trying to go through all of them on my list. I've been to Darlington. Darlington's great. Darlington's great.
Darlington's probably second or third on my list.
Really, it is.
Like, it's so opposite from Daytona. Daytona feels so new school. Darlington is so beautifully old school. Doesn't have the same amenities nearby or anything like that. So it's not the most convenient track, but boy, when you get up there and just see the cars slide up to the wall in the center of the corner, that's probably second or third on my list.
There's nothing like watching those cars ripping right next to the wall at Darlington. There really isn't. Mm-hmm. And also like I know, because I remember I went there, like the track pops up in the middle of the nowhere out of a bunch of cotton fields, and you walk over a creek to get to the grandstands. I remember from the parking lot. Like, yeah,
you do.
This is old school. So, I guess, did you ever get to your favorite Out of the Groove episode, by the way?
Favorite Out of the Groove episode? I would say I'm often a big fan of the some of the old paint scheme recaps and reviews I would do. I used to have a lot of fun with them. I need to bring some of that back. I think I've become too analytical and too, like, I'm nitpicking every little star and stripe on the decals and stuff. Now I need to go back to just boom, watch these cars. What's the first instinct I have? I've had a few of those that I really like doing back in the day. I'd have to think longer on that. I don't know if there's any one. I mean, there's interviews that I've done that stand out to me that I would say, like the episode I did with Matt Kenseth. That made me, that was like checking a bucket list item off. But besides interviews, yeah, I always like doing a paint scheme. I also like doing the episodes at the end of the year where I grade every driver's season. Like, oh, this guy totally failed expectations. He gets an F. This dude, wow, didn't expect, Chastain to make it to the championship 4. That's an A+. I know he didn't win it all, but that's an A+. I love also that. I think fans enjoy sort of that summary of at the end of the year as well.
Wow, awesome. So moving on now to talking about your relationships with other content creators, can you tell me, who were some of your favorite NASCAR content creators to watch as you were working your way up? Because, I mean, you were right. The YouTube's kind of a new thing, so you didn't really have like someone really to base your thoughts off of. So you kind of were learning with these people together in the trenches. So who were some of these people you loved watching as you were developing as a creator?
Yeah, when I first started, and one of the first people I saw doing stop motion type videos was Gino Harvey. Aflac Cup Series is what he went by on YouTube. He's still occasionally will put out new videos, which I think he's married with I think he has a kid now. So I absolutely respect that he sticks to his roots. He was a titan of that tight knit community back in the day. And I got to meet him actually at Road America a couple of years ago in person for the first time, and that was really, really cool. But since I got to doing Out of the Groove, a lot of my good friends that I do different shows and podcasts with, Darian Gilliam, Jarrett Lundberg, The Iceberg, Danny B Talks, good friends. I met them at the beginning of 2018, and I felt like that was another sort of turning point in YouTube because I've been aching for that conversation. I wanted to be I wanted to be able to talk NASCAR with people my age. And I'd accomplished that with Out of the Groove, doing that in comment sections and on Twitter and whatnot, but then getting to do it weekly in person and even on, off camera with just peers my age that all had similar backgrounds in racing like that. That also just made YouTube and made just being a NASCAR fan a whole lot more fun when I met those guys. And so obviously I still work with them and watch a lot of their videos. So, but those are the main ones. I mean, it took a while for there to be a lot of, NASCAR talk show videos on YouTube. I've met guys like David Land, who I know mostly does IndyCar stuff now. And we haven't always agreed within our videos, at least on key topics. I think we've had a little rivalry here and there in the past, but I think I would say we're friends now. He's a really good dude. And when I was in Indianapolis a couple of years ago, very hospitable. He was so excited to show us around. He lived, I know he lives really close to the racetrack. It felt like he was showing off his new house to us and just wanted us all to feel as welcome and comfortable as possible. He was so proud of the Brickyard. And it was honestly just very, fun to see. Those are a lot of names I watched early on or still watch, or people that I've just become good friends with, honestly, which is great. Emperor Lemon, who's not a NASCAR YouTuber by any means. He's got like 1 million subscribers. He does all sorts of stuff, but he's done a few NASCAR videos. Found out a couple of years ago he's a big racing fan, and so we've gotten to meet him a few times at racetracks and talk to him. And he does, when he does pull out the editing software and does himself a NASCAR video, it's elite. It is fantastic. So I always love watching his stuff.
Wow, that's pretty awesome. So, tell me, it's obvious that you and the content creators that you're friends with, people like Jarrett, Darian, Danny, amongst others, you guys love to promote each other. You love to hype each other up. Yeah. You love to find ways to help promote people or promote them to these other audiences that you have that may not know who they are. And, tell me kind of like, where did that start out, of you trying to help raise each other's platform along with your own?
Yeah, it was interesting at first because when I first met them, there was certainly an imbalance there. I'd been doing it for a while. I think I had close to 100,000 subscribers at that point, and they were all just starting out, so they had nothing. And so it was a little one-sided at first. Let me just put it that way. I was probably offering them more promotion than they were offering me, but I saw it just as I could just see that, going back to our earlier conversation, there's no definitive guide on how to be successful on the internet. And so I just look at it as I need to surround myself with people I can trust, people who I can go to bounce ideas off of, to talk about the good and the bad of doing online content creation. And so, beyond just being friends outside of racing, I wanted to have, professional don't like the way, but I wanted to have peers that I could also rely on for, racing related stuff, for YouTube related things. And so that was just incredibly valuable to me, I think, in those early years, as they were still new and maybe would make a misstep here or there. I would make a misstep here or there, but like we could kind of keep each other in line and, again, bounce ideas off of. If someone had an idea that was just not going to work, we wouldn't be afraid to tell each other that, like, hey, I'd tell them, like, hey, I've done that type of video before. You can do it. This is what's going to happen. You may not be happy with the results. And they would be like, oh, okay. And they might still try it anyways. And oh, sure enough, that's kind of, they've experienced the same thing. So just to having folks my age going through the same process that I had been through and was still going through, it was just really valuable to me. And I think they probably felt the same way. And so, rising tide lifts all ships. We promote each other when, especially when we're excited about what one another are working on, and off camera, I think we also support each other just with advice and just talking about different things. And I think that's, again, if you're going to take on this wild west that is the internet, it's good to have a few people in your corner that you can count on to get advice from and bounce ideas off of.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and that obviously, given the fact that the internet's still a relatively new thing, it would make sense that there would need to be a lot of bouncing ideas off of each other, because again, I mean, we're the first generation to grow up with YouTube really being a thing,
Yeah.
And so obviously, I told you earlier, you guys really are the first generation of like NASCAR talk shows on YouTube, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
Is that, have you ever thought about that reality that you are kind of that first generation? And do you like to think about that even?
I don't think about it too much. I think the only innovative element of my content really is that it's on YouTube. I mean, there's been talk shows for 100 years or something. I don't know. There's been talk shows since the radio was the primary form of communication and entertainment. So, just sort of taking a lot of those traditional tropes and just applying them to a new platform. I guess, there's something special about that or innovative about that. But, I'm just a guy talking about NASCAR news, what I find interesting, and I hope other people find it interesting as well. So I do feel flattered when I see on YouTube other people similar in age to me doing kind of obviously the same thing. I'm like, oh yeah, that looks a lot like Out of the Groove. I see what you're doing. You got, pieces of race cars in your background. You're talking into a camera. You got a little intro. You got a catchy little name. I'm like, oh, that's great. Go for it. I welcome it. I think it's awesome. The more conversation around stock car racing, the better for everyone, I believe. But beyond that, I'm flattered that people are, I guess, inspired in some way, shape, or form by things I've done or that folks like me have done. But to me, I don't think of it that way. I think of like I'm taking things that other people have done and trying to make it my own. Like I feel like everything is derivative from something previously. So
I guess we'll finish up. We're kind of right at that limit of the amount of time our kind of goal time for this podcast to be. So I'll ask you one last question here. It's kind of a big one, but and I don't know exactly how to ask it, but I guess the way that I'll say is kind of like, what's your future? Do you plan on doing Out of the Groove forever? Do you have other aspirations? Do you want to maybe go into something like, like broadcasting, like traditional, like play-by-play broadcasting, or something like making movies or any of that sort of stuff, going back to Hollywood at some point in your future? Do you have that? Or have you even thought about it?
I think about it quite a bit. I think, another part of doing YouTube and things is I've struggled with the idea that this is all almost too good to be true, that I'm able to, make a living. I'm able to live on my own, support myself, talking about something that I grew up just adoring, something I was in love with growing up, and I get to make my own schedule. I'm so fortunate that it's worked out as well as it has, that every day to some degree in the back of my mind, I just imagine it's all going to crash and burn and be taken away by anything. Anything could happen. And so, I guess from that perspective, it sometimes is hard for me to think too far out into the future. I really like Out of the Groove where it is now. And I could see myself following the same routine for many more years, 20 years, maybe not. I don't know. I do have other interests, but I also have always loved NASCAR, and I don't think that's ever going to change. So as long as I can sort of, again, marry my interests in filmmaking and being a part of the conversation, and also, combining that with NASCAR, then I think I'm going to keep doing it. But I don't know. There's a ton of different goals, within the racing industry. I like working for myself. It would be awesome to collaborate or do something with a major network or studio at some point or another, but it's not, I don't see that as something I need to cross off my list at some point. I think it'd be cool to one day be like more closely tied into a race team, not like to own my own NASCAR team, but to be able to sort of be a close, maybe a partner in a race team that I can that can be a source of content that would be really enlightening. Like, hey, here's a team starting up from scratch. Let's let you into the process. Like, I think it's been so fun the last few years to follow Trackhouse's rise, 2311, all these new teams coming to the sport. We hear bits and pieces about how they came about, but we don't really know. We don't really know how intense those conversations are, how stressful, how risky these investments are. We don't really know. We don't have any insight into that. So I think it'd be cool to one day be closer to that side of the industry and be able to make content on that. But I guess it's all going to come back to content. I like making videos. I like sharing videos with the world. And maybe the style of content will change a little bit over the years. Hopefully we can continue to get bigger. That's why I love Daily Downforce, because now we have content that's written by great writers like yourself. That is, it's a different medium, a different outlet, reaches a different audience. I think, content is always going to be king in whatever I do. And if it changes a little bit, it changes. I could see it not changing for a long time. I don't think I'll do Out of the Groove when I'm 60, at least not in its current form. It might have evolved into a different format, but you're not going to see, I don't think it's going to look like this even in 20 years, quite honestly. It'll definitely change at some point.
Well, thank you for that compliment. I do appreciate that. Eric, I think you echo the sentiments of a lot of people that are in this business, which is just that, it does seem too good to be true that every day you get to wake up and you get to talk about something that you love. And, that's what you get to do on a daily basis. And you have so much joy for that. That's so obvious. And, that's really cool. And, you just got to keep doing what you're doing. And you know what? The encyclopedia of YouTube is getting written every single day. And, you're learning every day. We're learning every day how to navigate the internet. And, that's just awesome to hear. So, folks, thank you so very much here. And Eric, thank you so very much here for joining us here today on this first episode of Next Gen Creators. Thank you so very much, folks, for tuning in to this episode of Next Gen Creators. And a big thank you to Eric Estepp for joining us for the very first episode. Eric has, he is a great partner of the Daily Downforce, and he is awesome. And he really was great to work with this interview. And as you heard, he was very honest and he was very open, and it was great to hear some interesting things that I didn't know about him, and to hear about kind of how Out of the Groove became a thing, and about how things like the pandemic actually launched him to where he is today. And also finishing off by being very honest about what he wants to do with his future. And that was really great to hear. It was really awesome to hear. And we thank you so much again for tuning in. Again, we do not have our next guest lined up yet, but if you want a content creator on this podcast, then please feel free to send it our way. Comment, message us any way that you can. At Daily Downforce on Twitter is our Twitter follow. So please be sure you talk to us and tell us where you want or who you want on this show, and who you want to hear from, because all these content creators have a story. They're a very interesting story. They're fun stories, and they're really cool to hear from some of these people and hear about their passion for creating NASCAR content on places like YouTube and even other places. And it's always great to hear these people and kind of get a peek behind the curtain at who they are behind just what they do on YouTube or in a podcast or when they write on a daily basis, anything like that. It's really awesome to see, and it's just really cool to hear them be just kind of raw and honest, and hear them talk about and what they're passionate about and what they love. It's really cool to see, really cool to hear. Folks, thank you so much again for tuning into this episode of Next Gen Creators. I'm Joshua Lipowski. Have a great day.